Megan had learned a bitter lesson about trust through experiences that taught her it is a gift that should not be given lightly. This harsh learning became painfully clear in an unexpectedly complex way. In January of the previous year, a surgery confined her at home, imposing a period of rest that led her to a state of isolation. With loneliness weighing on her shoulders and curiosity sharpened by free time, Megan found herself exploring a dating app, a virtual terrain where she hoped to find some distraction, perhaps even companionship. It was in this digital space that she came across the profile of Jack, a man whose presence was magnetic even through a screen. An Austrian with an easy smile and a thoughtful gaze, Jack immediately sparked Megan's interest. Despite the thousands of kilometers separating them, she decided to start a conversation. From the first exchanges of messages, a palpable connection was established between them, fueled by long daily conversations and video calls that lasted into the night. Unbeknownst to Megan, weeks of fluid dialogue and sharing dreams and fears made her fall deeply in love with Jack, who also seemed to harbor intense feelings for her. The bond that formed between them was so strong that it didn't take long for them to start making plans for a future face-to-face meeting. Carried by the strength of this feeling, Megan felt a wave of audacity and decided to take a decisive step. One evening, after a particularly emotive conversation, she said to Jack, with a voice trembling with hope and anxiety, "Jack, I am truly in love with you and would like to know if you are willing to make our relationship more serious. For me, that would mean commitment, exclusivity." There was a brief silence as Jack processed the words, before responding with a sincerity that touched Megan's heart. When you talk about serious, you mean exclusivity, right? Even though we have never met in person and live so far apart, I accept. I want no one else, just you, he declared firmly. The conversation, filled with implicit promises and shared hopes, marked a new chapter in Megan's life, full of possibilities and dreams. However, she was still unaware of the challenges and revelations that this new chapter would bring, challenging the solidity of the foundation on which they were trying to build their future together. After months of a growing connection cultivated through screens and keyboards, Jack decided to use his work vacation to make a significant trip to the United States, with the aim of meeting Megan in person. It was May, a month marked by celebrations, including Jack's birthday, and Megan's excitement was almost tangible. She was filled with a youthful exuberance, reminiscent of the vibrant emotions of a first love discovered in the bloom of youth. When Jack finally arrived, the atmosphere was one of pure anticipation. Megan waited at the airport, her heart racing, her eyes anxiously scanning every face that passed through the arrival area. Upon spotting him, a smile lit up her face, and any trace of nervousness dissipated the moment their eyes met. The hug that followed was long and full of emotion, marking the end of her wait and the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. "I can hardly believe you're really here," Megan whispered, still in Jack's arms. "I was counting every second until this moment too," he replied, with a smile that reflected all the happiness of being by her side. Jack stayed at Megan's house, which quickly became a home for both of them, filled with laughter, deep conversations, and shared moments that only solidified what they had already built virtually. Each day together was an opportunity to discover new affinities and explore the affection they had for each other in more tangible ways. They spent the mornings exploring the city, visiting quaint cafes and sunny parks, where they talked about everything and nothing at the same time. The afternoons were dedicated to more homely activities. They cooked together, a process that often ended in flower wars and uncontrollable laughter, or they snuggled on the couch to watch movies. "I never thought cooking could be so much fun," Jack once commented as he tried to remove flour from his hair. And I never thought I could laugh so much trying to make a simple pizza," Megan replied, surrendering to the joy of the moment. In the evenings, they often found themselves at a small local restaurant that quickly became their favorite, where they shared meals under the soft glow of candlelight, discussing future dreams and joint plans. These moments reinforced the depth and intensity of the love they shared, a love that now expressed itself freely, without the barriers of screens or distances. Each day reaffirmed Megan's certainty of her feelings. The physical closeness only confirmed what her heart already knew. The connection between them, now experienced face-to-face, was a powerful and undeniable force, weaving an ever-stronger bond between their hearts. Sharing common dreams of marriage, children, and a life together, Megan felt it was the perfect moment to solidify their future together. On Jack's birthday, she prepared a surprise that marked both a celebration and a commitment. With a look full of emotion and affection, she approached him and, holding his hands, said with all the sincerity of her heart, "Jack, I'm not joking when I say that I love you. I love you deeply and take our relationship very seriously. Will you marry me?" Jack's response came quickly and with an enthusiasm that reflected the depth of his own feelings. "A yes, I accept. There is no one else with whom I want to share my life," he declared, his eyes shining with the promise of a future together. With a simple yes, they sealed a commitment, becoming engaged, promised to each other, ready to embark on a new journey that would take them further than either could have imagined. The euphoria of the days shared between Meghan and Jack could not last forever, and, inevitably, the moment of farewell arrived. The day Jack needed to return to Austria seemed to have moved forward on the calendar with cruel speed, and the impact of the separation was a heavy blow for Meghan. It felt as if an essential part of her life was being torn away, leaving a painful void in her heart that throbbed with the sadness of goodbye. In their final moments together, as they packed Jack's bags, they tried to muster a smile, viewing the farewell not as an end, but as a pause in their story together. "Remember, it's just a matter of time until we see each other again," Jack said, trying to console Meghan with a tight hug. Meghan, holding back tears, replied with a choked voice, "I know, but it will feel like an eternity. I'll be counting the days until I'm in your arms again." Before Jack departed, they made plans for Meghan to visit Austria in 3 months. This promise of reunion served as a beacon of hope for both, illuminating the days of separation that would follow. They continued to nourish their love with daily conversations, where every word and every shared laugh over video calls helped bridge the distance between them. Nights were spent planning what they would do together in Austria, from exploring historical sites to quiet moments in local cafes, each plan further strengthening the bond and the certainty that what they shared was true and enduring. These daily conversations became the routine that sustained Meghan and Jack's love, making each day a countdown to their next meeting. With each passing day, they fell even more in love, reaffirming the commitment and union they had promised to each other, and keeping alive the flame that had been ignited in their hearts from their first virtual encounter. In August, driven by a mix of anticipation and nervousness, Meghan embarked on her journey to Europe, her soul laden with dreams and expectations. Austria, with its picturesque landscapes and rich history, promised to be a charming place, potentially her future home. Upon landing, she was immediately captivated by the country's breathtaking beauty, from the imposing mountains to the delicate architectural details of the cities that seemed like fairy tales. However, upon arriving at Jack's residence, Meghan found herself somewhat surprised and uncomfortable with the notable lack of cleanliness and organization. Despite this, she tried not to judge too hastily. She attributed these characteristics to cultural diversity and reminded herself that they might just be different customs to which she would need to adapt. The stay proceeded without major incidents until one particular night, which tested the couple's tranquility. As sleep enveloped them both in a comforting embrace, the shrill sound of Jack's phone shattered the night's calm. He answered quickly, his expression transforming into one of nervousness and concern. Meghan, awakened by the sudden commotion, felt a tightness in her heart. Jack, what's happening?" "Who was that?" she asked, her voice tinged with anxiety. Jack, trying to remain calm, responded as he dressed hurriedly, "It's nothing you need to worry about, dear. Go back to sleep. I just need to resolve something quick, return a key to a friend who needs it." The response, despite its soothing tone, carried an unusual urgency that left Meghan uncomfortable. However, she chose to trust Jack, attributing the situation to one of those unexpected quirks of everyday life that sometimes arise. With a mix of trust and doubt, she watched Jack leave in the middle of the night as the quietude of a subtle unrest began to settle in her heart. As Meghan's return date to the United States approached, feelings of anticipation and melancholy intertwined in her heart. During her stay, she and Jack had deepened their relationship even further, and now, with farewells in sight, every moment together seemed even more precious. One evening, as they watched the twilight from the balcony of Jack's house, the conversation turned to the future. Meghan, holding Jack's hand tenderly, shared her concerns and desires. "Jack, you know how important it is for me to be close to my parents. They are all I have," she began, her soft voice revealing a touch of vulnerability. Jack, whose eyes reflected a deep understanding of Meghan's concerns, nodded. I completely understand, Megan. And I love how much you value your family. It only makes me respect and love you more, he replied, squeezing her hand in affirmation. It was then that Jack made a significant decision, demonstrating the commitment he felt for Megan. I've thought a lot about this, and I want you to know that I am willing to move to the United States. I want to be by your side, not just for a few days or months, but permanently, Jack declared, the weight of his decision evident in his words. Megan, surprised and moved by Jack's willingness to share his life fully, felt tears well up in her eyes. Are you sure? It means leaving your life here, everything you know. Jack interrupted her with a confident smile. I am sure. My place is with you, Megan. Wherever that may be. This conversation reinforced the bond between them, further rooting the hope and expectation in Megan's heart for the future alongside the man she loved. With renewed commitment and a plan of action in mind, they spent the last few days together formulating ideas and organizing how Jack's transition to a new life in the United States would unfold. Megan would return home not only with memories and promises but with the assurance that soon, they would begin a new chapter of their lives together. As spring began to bloom, bringing with it the promise of renewal and celebration, the April wedding date of Megan and Jack seemed increasingly threatened by a series of unexpected events and alarming revelations. In the months leading up to the big day, Megan noticed that Jack was incessantly postponing the purchase of his plane ticket to the United States, always with the promise that he would resolve it soon. This continual hesitation began to sow doubts in Megan's heart, making her question if something deeper was wrong. The situation became even more complicated in January when Jack was diagnosed with thrombosis, a serious impediment to air travel that would require him to stay grounded for 6 weeks. Megan, though worried about Jack's health, felt relieved when, finally, the doctor cleared him to travel in early March. However, that hope soon dissipated. Initially, the couple had planned a simple civil ceremony followed by a small celebration, although Megan had always dreamed of a grand party. However, just 6 days before the newly scheduled date for Jack's arrival, he called Megan, his tone laden with despair and tears. I won't. I'm completely out of money. I need more time, he confessed, his voice choked with emotion. Megan, confused and desperate to keep their wedding plans on track, quickly offered a solution. What do you mean, more time? I have money, I can help you, she said, trying to remain calm and find a practical solution. However, Jack repeated, with tragic firmness, that he needed more time, without providing further details. Shortly after this conversation, without any more explanations, he admitted himself into a psychiatric hospital. Megan was stunned and confused by the sudden turn of events. Sitting alone in her room, she tried to piece together the puzzle, struggling to understand the real reasons behind Jack's drastic decision and what it would mean for the future they had so carefully planned. Uncertainty and concern dominated her thoughts as she pondered what the future would hold for their relationship, now that everything seemed to be crumbling around her. Shaken by a wave of shock and disbelief that made her falter in her own feelings, Megan felt she needed answers to Jack's inexplicable behavior. Desperate for some understanding, she sought comfort and clarification from the only person she thought could help, Jack's mother. Gathering her courage, Megan picked up the phone and dialed the number she knew by heart, each ring increasing her anxiety. When Jack's mother answered, Megan could not contain her distress. I just don't understand what's happening, she began, her voice trembling. We have a wedding planned, I've made renovations at home, rented the place for the ceremony, and now everything seems to be falling apart. Jack's mother, with a tired and heavy voice, sighed before beginning to reveal the web of lies in which her daughter-in-law was entangled. Megan, I'm so sorry you've been put in this situation. You need to know everything. During the conversation that followed, which lasted almost an hour, the truth about Jack was painfully unraveled. His mother explained that months ago, Jack had been fired after stealing money from the company where he worked. At that phone call he received that night, when he left in a hurry, it was related to the crime he committed, she revealed, her voice laden with disgust. Since then, Jack had been facing a legal process that prevented him from leaving the country, a detail he skillfully hid from Megan. He's known about this for months, but chose not to tell you, his mother said, sadness evident in every word. Even as you were planning the wedding with such care and expectation, he continued to lie. In addition to the theft, Jack's addiction to alcohol and gambling exacerbated his already precarious financial situation, consuming not only the money he had but also creating enormous debts with his own family. He's drowned in debts, and the alcohol, the gambling, all of this led him to that hospital admission, his mother continued. It was a desperate attempt to cope with his dependencies and the pressures of debts and legal complications. Megan listened, each new revelation striking her like a blow, leaving her more dazed and disoriented. Tears ran freely down her face as she struggled to comprehend the extent of the deception. How could he do this to me?" she murmured, more to herself than to Jack's mother. "I'm really sorry, Megan. You didn't deserve any of this," was the sincere response, tinged with shared sadness. At the end of the call, Megan sat in silence, the phone still in her hand, the weight of the revelations crushing her. She knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but she also understood that the truth, as painful as it was the first step to healing her broken heart and rebuilding her life. The revelation about Jack was a devastating blow to Megan, who found herself navigating a whirlwind of emotions, each wave a mix of disillusionment and betrayal. The image of the man she loved, and with whom she had dreamed of sharing her life, crumbled before her eyes, leaving in its place only the grim reality of his actions and omissions. The initial shock transformed into a dull and persistent pain, as if the ground had been pulled out from under her feet. Sitting alone in the corner of her room, Megan struggled to understand how Jack could have been so deceitful. How could you do this to me, Jack? How could you lie like that?" she whispered to herself, her voice trembling with sadness and anger. The fact that he had allowed her to accumulate debts for a wedding he knew would not happen added a bitter sense of betrayal to her pain. "I was building a life with an illusion," she reflected, tears running freely down her face. The feeling of having been deeply deceived was overwhelming, and the sadness of having loved someone who, in the end, did not exist as she believed, was crushing. However, over time, and after much reflection and tears, Megan began to find a path to peace. She grew stronger as the days passed, the months helping her to see that although her pain was real, she also possessed an equally real resilience. Today, stronger, Megan can talk about her story with a certain emotional distance, recognizing that sharing her experience is a crucial part of her recovery. "If truly loving is a sin, then I have sinned," she would say in conversations with friends, using her own experiences as a life lesson. "I sinned because I believed, I surrendered, and I was sincere with my feelings." She learned that not everyone is trustworthy and that a person's true intentions are rarely visible on the surface. Be careful, she advised those willing to listen. And not all people deserve our love. With these words, Megan wanted not only to share her story, but also to educate others about the importance of protecting the heart, without, however, completely closing herself off from the world and the possibilities of new loves and new joys.